The biggest storyline in Philadelphia right now, A.J. Brown's interview. It lasted about 13 minutes in front of his locker room at the NovaCare complex. It was raw, it was honest, it was candid, and it was real. And we're going to go through some of the most telling quotes during that interview today because this is a major development potentially in the Eagles' 2023 season. The Eagles' star wide receiver meeting with the media for the first time in a couple of weeks, and I thought it was really transparent and it was important to happen. He also addressed his entire team and apologized for his bad body language and his actions. Before we take a look and dissect all of this, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Before Sunday's regular season finale against the New York Giants, can we get to 70,000 subscribers? We are 689 people away, and what you get is coverage every single day on the Birds that's informative, entertaining, and insightful, and it also involves you, the fan, because this is a forum for you to share your knowledge of this football team as well. So in this A.J. Brown interview today, he addressed a couple of really pressing topics. That includes the coaching staff, Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni, the play calling from Brian Johnson, his actions and his body language, and how he was able to speak with the team and apologize for how he's carried himself as a team captain. And the early takeaways from the media members who were there, and I don't think that this is hyperbolic to say, some people were saying, this may have saved the Philadelphia Eagles season because they felt the tension relieved in the Eagles locker room. And as Philadelphia's lost 4 out of 5 games, there's been a lot of pressure and a lot of tension. They also said that it was some of the most professional interviewing that had happened and one of the best interviews from a professional athlete during a time of adversity that they had ever seen. So those takeaways coming up, but first, got to give a shout out to Factor Meals, the sponsor for today's show. Get 50% off, factormeals.com/EaglesChat50. Get started on your resolutions with Factor so that you're ready for the new year. Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery takes the stress out of meal planning, and it sets you up for success in the new year. Skip the grocery stores, the prep work, and cooking fatigue. Instead, get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered straight to your door. With over 35 meals to choose from per week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan and veggie, and more, plus over 55 weekly add-ons. To all my homies out there, you'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart all of your resolutions. Skip the overpriced takeout trap. Factor is cheaper and way more delicious than takeout. With these chef-crafted restaurant-quality meals delivered right to your door, you're going to be able to eat good and feel good as well. So pick your pre-made meals. They are prepped and cooked to perfection. All you have to do, heat them up and enjoy them. They're ready in a couple of minutes. I had one last night. It was delicious. Factormeals.com/EaglesChat50. To what A.J. Brown had to say, we're going to kind of go quote for quote here during the show on not speaking with the media. What was the explanation? He said, I didn't speak with the media because I didn't want to be negative. We were already going through a tough time. And like I said, I was raised, if I had nothing nice to say, I'm not going to say anything. Everything I do or say, I'm classified as a monster. That last line there and that last sentence, pretty honest and telling for a player of this caliber to kind of explain how he's been feeling. And that's really the theme of what A.J. Brown was talking about during this entire interview and how he carried himself. And what I think is important is how players rave about A.J. Brown as well as his teammates. He's a team captain. They say that he's a team leader. He set up a team meeting for all of the captains last week to try to get everybody on the right page because everything has been off over the last few weeks during this losing skid. And for A.J. Brown and the entire Eagles team, when things go right in Philly, an amazing place to play. The passion is unmatched. And that passion is part of the reason why it can be a tough place to play. Because when things go poorly, the sky is falling like it has been in the city of brotherly love, and everything is micro-analyzed. And I think that's what A.J. Brown is talking about when he says, I become a monster, when everything kind of is microanalyzed with what I say, and people make me out to be somebody who I'm not, and they look at my body language and they cast me out to be the problem. Speaking of that body language, here's what A.J. Brown had to say about that. Everybody in this locker room is frustrated. Why are you singling me out? Because I'm shaking my head, I'm showing emotion. Look at everybody in the stadium. They were frustrated, and of course, I'm upset that my guy Devontae Smith got banged up on that 3rd and long. And that's when the camera panned to A.J. Brown, and he was shaking his head. Now, he didn't get targeted on that critical drive. I'd be frustrated too, and then he sees his teammate get hurt. That sucks as well. It's a fair point from a player's point of view. When the Eagles don't play well, even if they're sporting a really good record, they get booed by the fan base. And what does the broadcast like to do to add to the juicy storylines and to promote some of the drama? Because keep in mind, this is an entertainment product. Fox, CBS, ESPN, NBC, whatever network is broadcasting these games, when things don't go right, they pan to the Mad Eagles fans, especially the lady who I absolutely love the emotion from Sunday where she's like, what are you doing on that final drive? So for A.J. Brown, yeah, he's frustrated, but he's also sharing the feelings of all the other fans, 70,000 deep at Lincoln Financial Field. So I see where he's coming from there. Now, I've said here on the show, I think that he can carry himself in a little bit of a better manner. He's wearing the C on his chest. He's a captain for this football team, and people look at a player like that to lead, and when they see body language from arguably their best player this year, that can be a little bit contagious. Here's what A.J. Brown had to say about offensive coordinator Brian Johnson. If one man goes the wrong way 1 inch, the play is over. That's what happens. And that's what happened the last drive. Brian is getting crucified for that play call. If somebody goes to the left and they block a certain person, it's a 30-yard touchdown. That's why this is the greatest game that there is. A.J. Brown is not the only leader on this Eagles team who is defending the play calling on that final drive. Jason Kelce actually didn't have a problem with it at all. He said that on the New Heights podcast with his brother Travis Kelce. And we know that football is a game of execution. And that's part of the reason why I love the game of football, whether it's high school, which I covered to start my broadcasting career, whether it's college, and I covered Penn State when I was working at WNEP, or the NFL right now. The synergy and the symmetry and everybody being on the same page, 11 men doing their job, it's one of the beautiful things about the game of football. And if one player misses their assignment, the whole play can go to shit. And that's what A.J. Brown is alluding to right there. My thoughts on Brian Johnson, I think that his situational play calling hasn't been great. In crunch time at moments, I think he's failed in some areas that are somewhat glaring. And I think all throughout this year, he's been too inconsistent of a play caller. Keep in mind that this is Nick Sirianni's offense. So Nick Sirianni has fingerprints on this offense. He's partially to blame. And Brian Johnson probably has a collection of play calls that he can call in any given moment. But in some of the critical situations of a game, I'm like, Brian Johnson, what are you calling here? Why are you going away from the run? Why aren't you sticking with your strengths? And overall, all year, why have the Eagles gone away from their physical and balanced offensive attack, which is what made them dangerous last year, where they beat you up at the line of scrimmage, they ran over you and through you, which then set up some of the explosive plays, which are lacking this year. But for all of the criticism that Brian Johnson has gotten, as well as Nick Sirianni, this Eagles offense has still been statistically pretty impressive. They have two 1,000-yard receivers in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. First time that two wide receivers have gone more than 1,000 yards in back-to-back years. They also have a 1,000-yard rusher in DeAndre Swift, who eclipsed 1,000 yards for the first time in his career. And then you look at where the Eagles offense ranks among all 32 teams in the NFL. They're 7th in points per game, 8th in yards per game, 6th in points per play, 2nd in third down percentage. They're 7th in touchdowns per game. A lot of the anger for this fan base should be directed toward the defense. That's partially on Howie Roseman, and it's also on Sean Desai, Matt Patricia, and the lack of players and dudes on that side of the ball. They're awful at linebacker. They're not great at safety. They're 29th in points per game, 23rd in yards per game, 27th in points per play, 30th third down percentage, And while the Eagles are 7th in scoring 3 touchdowns per game offensively, the Eagles defense is giving up 3 touchdowns per game defensively, which ranks 29th in the NFL too. So the Eagles defense hasn't really been doing the Eagles offense that many favors. As far as A.J. Brown being frustrated with his usage, I'm not sure if he's frustrated with that. I know that on yesterday's show, we talked about how much he was targeted and the numbers that he put up in the first 8 games as compared to the last 8 games of the season, and he was on pace for more than 2,000 receiving yards with the way that he was operating the first half of the year. But it's still been a pretty good season for A.J. Brown. I think he's just really frustrated after hearing that interview today with the team failing to reach a standard, with everybody not doing their job, and this entire team collectively not reaching their potential of greatness. He has 49 fewer receiving yards this year, but more catches, 105 to 88, more targets this year, 155 to 147, more first downs, 70 to 59, more yards per game, 90 to 88, higher catching percentage. Touchdowns are down 11 to 7, and the yards per catch are down from 17 to just under 14. So the explosive nature of this Eagles offense has affected A.J. Brown specifically as well. Now, who is to blame for the Eagles' offensive struggles this year? Really want to hear from you in the comment section because we do value your feedback. NS for Nick Sirianni or BJ for Brian Johnson. You can also type P for the players because today A.J. Brown said it's on the players. And here's what A.J. Brown had to say about Nick Sirianni. He takes up for us and stands up for us when it has nothing to do with him. Just like Brian Johnson, they get the wrong end of the stick when it's on us. I can tell you that there may be things that Nick Sirianni probably wants to fix about himself, but one thing I can respect, loyalty is not one of them. I say that because he takes up for it when it has nothing to do with him, and he gets the blame. That comes with this job, but the coaches played 0 snaps this year. It's not the coaches, it is us. And the Eagles' sloppiness, it is partially on Nick Sirianni. It's on this coaching staff, which has been lacking in that department all throughout this year. It's also on the players, though. Some of these back-breaking penalties, it comes down to the players doing the wrong thing. So the penalties and the execution, it could be on the players as well. A.J. Brown also had something interesting to say about what happened in that Seahawks game. He said Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown tried to freelance on that last play, and that's why Nick Sirianni said that, yeah, we tried to get the PI call downfield, which I thought didn't make any sense at the time. He said it because he was sticking up for A.J. Brown as well as Jalen Hurts. So that's the respect that he's getting from this locker room. And for A.J. Brown to say that, it sounds like Nick Sirianni has not lost this locker room. Here's what A.J. finally said on the Eagles' outlook as we round out with this. We're right there. All this freaking adversity, we're right there. That's what happens when you're trying to get to the next step. Gravity pulls against you. Everything pulls against you. And I think we're going to fight through it, push through it, and be fine. We got the right people in this locker room. We're going to get it right. And what we've been saying all year, I know that you, just like me, we're tired of hearing the word execution. We're tired of hearing the what ifs. But what if the Eagles put it all together? What if in the playoffs they can string together a couple of playoff performances in which they don't turn it over? There aren't dumbass penalties. The communication is better. The explosive plays return. They become a more creative and balanced offense. And they play solid from minute 1 to minute 60. With all that talent, tough team to beat, although that defense, it's sketchy as heck. 3 road playoff games could be tough for Philadelphia if they do have to go on the road for all 3 of those playoff games to make it back to the Super Bowl. But it is doable because the talent and the playoff experience is there for the Birds. So I've been worried about this team. But with everything that A.J. Brown said today, it feels like the weight has been lifted off this team a little bit, and I even feel less pressure in talking about this team. So what do you think? Can this interview turn the season around? Sounds silly, but something like this needed to happen to address some of the awkwardness. Y for yes, N for no. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching the show.